All right, today we're jumping into a new MIT report, and it's a bit of a detective story. It's all about the massive mystery at the heart of the generative AI revolution. See, businesses are pouring in billions of dollars, but for most of them, the promised payoff, that ROI, is totally missing in action. So let's get into it and figure out what's going on.
First up, let's just talk about the scale of this thing, because it is huge. We're talking about a colossal investment here. Over just the last couple of years, enterprises have poured something like $40 billion into generative AI. That is a staggering amount of money, right? All of it chasing this dream of transformation.
And here's the shocking twist in the story. For all that cash being spent, 95% of these organizations are seeing basically zero return. I mean, nothing showing up on the P&L. That's right, for almost everyone, the money's flowing out, but nothing measurable is coming back in. So what on earth is going on here?
Well, this whole phenomenon actually has a name, and it's pretty much the central theme for us today. It's called the Great GenAI Divide. And really, it's the perfect way to describe this massive gap between the promise of AI and what's actually happening on the ground.
And this divide, it is stark. You've got this tiny fraction of companies, we're talking just 5%, who seem to have cracked the code. They're pulling in millions in real, actual value. And then you've got everyone else, the other 95%. They're just stuck in what the report calls a state of high adoption but low transformation.
Okay, so let's play detective for a minute. Let's look at the clues. Where's all this money actually going? And maybe more importantly, why isn't it really changing how businesses operate? When you look at the data, the picture it paints is, well, it's pretty revealing.
And what's crazy is, despite all the hype, all the noise you hear online, GenAI is only causing real, deep structural disruption in two major sectors. Just two: technology and media. For everybody else, finance, healthcare, manufacturing, you name it, it's been a whole lot of experimenting, but not much is fundamentally changing.
You know, this quote from a COO in manufacturing just hits the nail on the head. It really captures that frustration. You hear all this talk about a revolution, but for most businesses, the day-to-day reality, it just hasn't changed.
All right, here's another huge clue in our mystery, what's called the pilot to production chasm. Now sure, general tools like ChatGPT are everywhere, people are using them, but look at the numbers for these custom enterprise AI tools. It's staggering. A full 95% of these projects never make it out of the pilot phase. They just die before they ever get used for real.
And this quote from a CIO, well, it tells you exactly why. It's so blunt, most of the enterprise tools getting pitched to these companies just aren't cutting it. They're not solving real-world problems in a way that actually helps, and you can tell the tech leaders are just not impressed at all.
Now this is a really fascinating paradox. On one hand, you have all these official big-budget AI projects just stalling out. But at the same time, there's this booming shadow AI economy. Get this, 90% of employees are using their personal AI accounts for work, even when less than half their companies have bought official licenses. So AI is changing how we work, for sure, but it's all happening unofficially, completely under the radar.
So those official dollars, where are they actually going? Well, the answer is pretty clear: sales and marketing. It's overwhelming. Something like 70% of all Gen AI investment is flowing right there. And, on the surface, that kind of makes sense. They're the departments that directly bring in revenue. But you have to ask, is that really the smartest play?
And this VP of procurement really puts their finger on the problem, right? It's just so much easier to get a budget approved for a tool that promises, say, more sales leads. It's a lot harder to justify spending on something that makes a back office department like procurement more efficient. The ROI is just harder to prove on a spreadsheet, and that creates this massive bias in where the money goes.
Okay, so we've laid out all the symptoms, right? We've got low disruption, tons of failed pilots, and all this biased investment. So now, let's solve the mystery. The report points to one single thing, one critical factor that explains the Gen AI divide better than anything else. So what is it? What's the real barrier to success here? What's the fundamental flaw that's holding 95% of companies back? Because it's not the AI models themselves. It's not a lack of data. And it's not some government regulation. The answer, it turns out, really starts with us, with user behavior. Think about it. Employees love their personal AI tools. Why? Because they're flexible. The answers feel better. You can play with it. But when it comes to those super expensive official company tools, they're skeptical.
They find them clunky, rigid, and just a pain to fit into how they actually work. I mean, listen to this lawyer's experience. It says it all. Their cheap, personal subscription runs circles around a $50,000 enterprise tool. Why? Because it lets him guide the conversation, to iterate, to adapt. The expensive tool? It's just static, rigid.
And that, right there, brings us to the #1 culprit, the learning gap. This is the heart of the problem. Most of these enterprise tools, they don't actually learn. They're static. They can't adapt to your feedback, they don't remember context from one conversation to the next, and that makes them feel brittle, clunky, and totally disconnected from how people really work.
And here are the consequences of that gap, plain as day. For quick, simple stuff, yeah, sure, people are happy to use AI. But for the really complex, high-stakes projects, they're choosing a human colleague 9 times out of 10. And the reason is simple. Humans learn. We remember. We adapt. Most of these AI tools just don't.
Okay, so we've diagnosed the problem. Now for the good news. There's absolutely a solution. The report actually lays out a super clear, actionable playbook. And it's all based on what that successful top 5% of companies are doing totally differently.
What these top companies are doing is really a fundamental shift in mindset. They don't treat AI like just another piece of software you buy off the shelf. No, they treat it more like hiring a new specialist team member. They demand deep customization, they focus only on real operational outcomes, and, this is key, they let their frontline managers lead the charge.
And the data on this couldn't be clearer. Companies that decide to buy, meaning they partner with external experts, are literally twice as likely to succeed with AI than companies that try to build everything in-house. Partnering up is just a way more effective strategy. Period.
So where are these successful companies finding the biggest wins? Well, it's probably not where you think. Yes, sales and marketing get all the hype and the budget, but the really massive savings, we're talking multi-million-dollar wins, they're coming from the back office. Things like automating processes, cutting way down on agency spending, and just making compliance a whole lot smoother.
So, what's next on the horizon? Well, once a company actually solves this learning gap problem, they unlock the next big evolution of AI. It's a future that the report calls the agentic web.
And all this really brings us to the final, and I think most critical question you should be asking, the GenAI Divide. It's not really about whether you have AI or you don't. It's about what kind of AI you're building. Are you building static tools that just sit there and wait for a prompt, or are you building dynamic systems that can actually learn, remember, and adapt on their own? Crossing that divide, that's the real challenge, but it's also the real opportunity.